We know that the Golden Text Group is uniquely placed to tell us about the stresses and the challenges and perhaps give us advice for the future. I'm aware that our second speaker this morning has not yet arrived, so I am going to ask you to give me a moment, and I'm going to ask Professor Ray Harwood if he might come forward, and we'll move his paper forward into this session in order that we don't hold you without a speaker. So if you would give us a moment, Professor Ray Harwood is going to come and bring his paper forward. Thank you. Right, just while we're organising our presentation here, I'll just introduce you to Professor Ray Harwood. He is going to take us through a mass customisation lecture. Professor Ray Harwood is Professor of Textile Engineering at Montfort University in Leicester in the UK. He is also Director of the Textile Engineering and Manufacture Research Group. He's working on mass customisation technologies since 1986, supported by a number of research grants from the EC, Industry and the UK Department of Trade and Industry. Professor Harwood was educated in Manchester. Excuse me. He has a BSc and a PhD and is a Fellow of the Textile Institute. So, thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. A little earlier than I anticipated, but nevertheless it's a great pleasure to be here in Cairo. It's my first visit, and I'm enjoying this conference and Cairo and its environments very much indeed. Okay, we're talking about customisation, and there have been a number of papers already at the conference which are on topics related to mass customisation. What I'm going to give you to some extent is my personal view in collaboration with my partner here, Jane Wyatt, who is at the conference but not a delegate. She's out enjoying the environment of Cairo at the moment. But this is Jane's speciality subject, and I'm helping her, if you like, in terms of presenting this information to you today. But customisation, if we look first of all at what the existing consumer choices are in the marketplace, we find that we've got the normal thing, of course, is that we experience most of the retailers, most of the clothing sales that go into the world are through the normal high street stores. But there are other options. Mail order is extremely strong in some of the Western countries and sells a large number of garments through that system. Made to measure, my suit today is made to measure, and of course we know that that has a very different price bracket associated with it from the high street stores. But we can go, now of course the growing area of internet shopping, and other speakers have talked about this, but nevertheless it's relevant to my own topic too. And so we have a number of essential choices through which we can obtain clothing. Okay, mass production. The target is of course the high street retailer, the high street chain. It's a take it or leave it environment. The high street suppliers with a range of sizes, which are in general an acceptably poor fit. And I emphasise the issue of acceptably poor fit. If they fit you well, great. If they don't fit you well, hard luck. So we have mass production. Most of us, of course, are very well aware of mass production options and what mass production means. We're looking for low price, rapid turnover, movement of fabric, movement of garments in a high street environment. A topic that's coming up more and more in our discussions in terms of what we might provide to customers is personalisation. The very simplest concept of personalisation is that you're altering an existing garment in some trivial way, quite often, to give it a personal effect. It may be a child's t-shirt and someone prints the child's name on the front, or a Mickey Mouse emblem, or whatever emblem. Something relatively simple that can be done at the retail point to personalise that garment to supply you with something quite a little bit closer to what you're looking for. Okay, there are many people that do this at all sorts of levels. Unfortunately, you can't see this slide at the back, but I've got a lot of slides to get through, so I'm not going to spend time on them all. Customisation for fit. What we're talking about here is essentially what mass customisation is, and I will come back to it later. But as I said to you earlier, in mass-produced garments, the retailers sell us a range of sizes. If you accept those sizes, fine. If you accept them and they don't fit you, they're an acceptable poor fit. And what we're looking for here is the potential for improving the aesthetic appearance of a garment or its functionality by customising it. And I'll come back to this concept later. The important issue is that I'm customising an existing product. I'm going to make essentially make a single garment that is suitable for an individual customer. And I want to do that at a price which is competitive with the mass-produced garments. The question is, can it be done, and do we want it? So, a customisation for fit would require a garment to be made for you. Okay, total bespoke garments, essentially that the men in the audience and the ladies in the audience are quite sure have all had garments made for them. And if you have a garment made for you, you have a tailor who takes your measurements, and you select the fabrics, and you can select the style from a range of fabrics and a range of styles, and you have a garment made, and you wait a number of weeks normally. I say normally a number of weeks if you're doing this in the UK. I go to a Savile Row tailor, I can spend a number of weeks or even a number of months by the time I've had 2 or 3 fittings before I get my final garment. If I do this in Hong Kong, I can have my garment in 24 hours. So that is what we're talking about. Bespoke, we have a tailor who works essentially for us to produce an individual garment. And we have the concept developing more and more nowadays where you get total design. Total design is the possibility where you even design the fabric, you even design the style. And there are 1 or 2 outlets, particularly in places like London and New York, where this is beginning to emerge in the marketplace. Very expensive, very exclusive, total design, not the mass production that's going to keep our textile industries in the world operating, but nevertheless exciting. Okay, I'm now looking at ordinary consumers, and the important areas where there is evidence of consumer dissatisfaction in terms of what they get is first of all in garment fit. Most ladies in particular will walk past certain types of retail outlet for the simple reason they know that the garments in those outlets will not fit them. So they have to search elsewhere. They cannot go into there's no point in going in except for the pleasure of looking, but most people do like to buy also. So what we find, of course, is the size ranges offered are only approximate to what the population requires. We understand this, and we know, of course, that there are population surveys being undertaken in most of the developed countries to try to improve the size chart, the sizes of garments as they provide them in a retail environment. But this is still only going to completely satisfy those people who are falling into what we call the normal size range. And the major markets that these tend to apply to are not, in fact, the total market. Individual retailers target individual markets, and there are very, very few that target what I call the mature population, people, say, over 50. And I just say that at this point in time, it's something I'm going to come back to later. There is an increasing demand for sophistication. Certainly in Europe and North America, we're looking more and more for garments which suit our particular lifestyle and needs more accurately. Okay, the current responses to industry to these customer dissatisfaction or the lack of satisfaction in industry essentially are limited to those that you're already aware of. They increase the frequency of design ranges. We end up with shorter production runs. And the shorter production runs, of course, mean that there's less profitability. The rate of turnover is very important. The rate of design and manufacture and everything else that goes with it is important. Short production runs certainly don't lead to high profits, but of course what we're talking about, we talk glibly about just in time, and meeting fashion and market requirements just in time when the market is running away from you itself poses major problems. But we do this, and we are in fact supplying our customers more and more with the sort of things they require. One of the interesting things, of course, is that major retailers are doing a great deal more to try to understand the nature of their customers. So they gather data at point of sale in one form or another, trying to understand what their customer requirements are. And of course we're now beginning to see greater efficiencies with the utilisation of B2B type communications within the supply chain. And of course there is enormous amount of development within this particular field to try to improve the just-in-time operation of our systems. Okay, let me look at what I mean by mass customization, particularly. We have mass-produced clothing. Mass-produced clothing is clothing which is produced completely finished. You buy it off the peg, and that is it. It's ready to wear, if you like. We have the ability to personalise in different levels of an existing garment. And okay, we can in that adjust to some extent. Many suppliers will provide a service for adjustment of existing garments. Certainly if the garment is worth a significant amount of money. I've talked about mass customisation for fit, and I shall be coming back to that in a moment, as I said. We do have the ability to do this, and there are some retailers offering customisation types of service. We have bespoke, we have the total choice of design and fabric, and we have total design where a unique product is designed. Okay, but what do I mean by mass customization? The picture that I am going to project to you, and I'm talking about today, is that we have an existing garment. It may be this suit, and you walk into a shop or a showroom or an environment, it may be a mail order catalogue or whatever, and you decide that suit, in this case a grey sort of pinstripe suit, is something you want. And off the peg doesn't fit adequately. And mass customization would be the objective of manufacturing that suit for you, this suit, not another suit, not something else, this product, or a product from a series of defined ranges, which would give you better fit, better comfort, better functionality. And the idea is that that would have to happen quickly and at a price which is not significantly different from the price of the off-the-peg garment. And the question is, what do we need to do that? Well, the first thing to do, of course, we have to understand where the difference in what I've got as a supplier and what you want as a customer are, and that definition is essentially related to body measurements. So the first thing we have to do is to capture body measurements. We have to take body measurements from the customer. We then have to transmit that information to the supplier. We have then to adapt an existing pattern, and I emphasise adapt an existing pattern, because all I'm doing is adapting this particular garment, in this case, for your particular requirements. So I've got pattern adaptation. I emphasise that again, because the pattern adaptation is one of the key factors in this whole process. We then have to produce a marker, and we produce with single ply cutting, produce the parts for a single garment, and we have to manufacture them. And that whole supply chain so far is quite clear. We then have to get that garment to the customer, back to the shop. The question is, what will the customer accept? Is the customer interested? Is this going to improve what the customer wants? Okay, so if we look at mass customization technology, there are a number of issues, most of them technological, related to this whole process. And we talk a lot about point of sale. The garment industry, the retailers, are service industries. They're providing a product of the population wants. So we would have to be thinking of going from a simple supplier of discrete garments to providing a service. And so what happens at point of sale is critically important. This type of service cannot be offered without people being involved. And if you go into many high street retailers, certainly in Europe, the point of sale service is at the moment oriented towards selling existing products and not selling you an alternative service which gives you the same product with better characteristics. So the point of sale issue is quite important. And we have to therefore to establish a management of data collection which would be based on customer measurements and making sure that the whole process is well organised. It's a management problem rather than a technology problem, I shall see later. So we need first of all at point of sale think about how we're going to manage our operation to provide the information that gives us the product the customer wants. We need to take customer measurements. We need to think about how we manage our ordering procedure, how we transmit that information to the pattern generation and marker making facility, which would not of course be on the premises. Okay, electronic systems are all in existence that can do this very efficiently. And then we'd have to think about the management of our garment assembly so that we keep track of individual garments that have got to go to individual customers, and we've got to send it back to the retail outlet or to get it to the customer in some form. There are other issues in all of this, and I'm very happy to answer questions, but there are too many issues. One, for example, is what is your returns policy? If you've made an individual garment, fit an individual, how do you handle the case where the customer is still dissatisfied? You know, you can ask me about that and I'll be happy to discuss it. Okay, the point is that mass customization, the point of sale, we'll be selecting garments from a limited range of designs. Those would be normally on display, in other words, the normal products that exist. The customer can see the garment, they can feel the fabric. You're not offering them anything different, you're offering them the same, but with better fit. Okay, so we can make our choice from the standard colours, fabric, designs, etc., but only within very limited choices, and we'd have to have confirmation of customer details. Ideally, there would have to be payment up front, and the information would be transmitted to the manufacturer. Okay, let's just look at body measurements. We talk a lot about automated body measurement technology. A number of customers, a number of retailers in Europe have tried to offer a level of customization service without using automated systems. And what they've generally found is that the skills required to take accurate body measurements are not there at the moment, like we're using people. There aren't enough people to provide what the market requires. And tailors, essentially, are the only people with sort of tailoring type training are the only people that can do this and can do it consistently. One of the issues, of course, is consistency. So you do need skilled labour, whatever you do. But the ideal situation is to do this thing, this body measurement automatically. And of course we talk about 3D scanners, there are papers on 3D scanners at this conference, and the 3D scanner costs about, that shouldn't be $1 million, it should be about $100,000 US. Not expensive, not cheap. The question is, do they work? But the scanner still requires a trained operator, so you've got the capital cost of the scanner, you've got the ongoing cost of trained operators, you've got maintenance costs, which are not insignificant, and you've seen, I guess, at the conference, many types of scanner. This just happens to be one from a UK company who produced this triform body scanner. The other thing is that at the moment people have to strip down to their underwear, and not everyone wants to do that and be measured. They have also to stand in a particular pose at the moment in order that the measurements can be taken. And this leads, of course, to significant difficulties for some people. Okay, most of them work on a range of different principles. This particular one projects a series of structured light images onto the body, and from that, capturing images of this, they can produce a 3D body map from which measurements can be extracted. The important thing is that there are two stages to this. The extraction of the 3D image, and from that, obtaining body measurements. The technology which exists at the moment, in many ways, is more than adequate to create a 3D body image. The difficulty is in measurement extraction. So when we look at scanner performance, we find that the majority of important measurements can in fact be obtained accurately, but not always satisfactorily. In other words, you may have to tune the product to your particular requirements. They're not suitable for all members of the population. Children are a problem. Many adults although they may be adult, don't want to stand still long enough, or don't want to hold the correct pose. But they are capable of being customised for particular garment types. One of the myths about body scanners is that you expect them everyone seems to expect them to do everything. In other words, you have a universal instrument that will give you measurements for, say, a tight-fitting jacket and a loose floppy dress, or a bra and pants, which are very different. The measurements are very different from what is required from a jacket. Now, you can, in fact, to a large extent, customise the software to give you the measurements you want for your range of products. But there are very few people that would want to sell a universal set of products. So that with some tolerance, one can normally get the sort of measurements you require. Interestingly enough, I've mentioned bras in particular. One of the problems with body scanners at the moment is actually measurement of bust volume. They're not really good for really close-fitting garments for ladies, mainly because bust volume and the way the body is shaped is different, and you get similar measurements with very different shapes of bust and bust requirements. Okay, we have checked whether these sort of scanners are acceptable, and they are acceptable to the general population. People are not frightened of them. They use them, they see them as being a useful tool in a retail environment. And there are, I've listed here 6 companies that currently supply, and there are others that supply body scanners. What is interesting to note here is that body scanner technology is moving rapidly. I believe that today, and I say today, that the Whipps and Wilson scanner gives us the best body image. And it uses TC Squared, who also make body scanners, software. And those two together are probably as good a system as you can buy at the moment. But in 6 months' time, any of these manufacturers could be in the lead in their technology. So if I were buying in 6 months' time, I would certainly want to look again. Okay. If we have our body measurements, we have, as you all know, by most of the standard suppliers of CAD/CAM software, the capability of doing pattern adaptation. The problem is pattern adaptation. Let me explain. Pattern adaptation is not an automatic process. It can be made automatic, and it can be or semi-automatic quite easily. But if you have someone who is lopsided, has a paunch, wears his trousers in a different position. I've got braces on today, as it happens. So that this is relatively easy. Where do you define the waist on a pattern? You know, where that individual wears his trousers is personal. And there are some issues that where the customization of software requires manual intervention. We would like to be able to totally automatically adapt a pattern to the personal expectations of individuals. And it can be done, but you have to teach the computer to do it. And in general, it requires fairly long runs to make this possible. The Gerber MTM software is excellent when you've trained it. The Lectra FitNet software is extremely adaptable when you've trained it. But if you're only going into short production runs, and remember, I'm going back to one of my earlier slides, if you're using short production runs, then you may not have time to train your products, your software, before the market has changed. So the question really is, do we have the time to develop the pattern adaptation rules? Now, the present method of developing patterns would have to be altered to make pattern adaptation rules operate from day one. At the moment, when a designer designs a garment and they look at the grading and the alterations of the patterns, they do not at that point develop pattern adaptation rules. If they did, then this problem that exists at the moment could well be overcome. Okay, efficient marker making exists. We know that automatic marker making isn't as efficient as individual marker making. If you're going to do the whole job quickly, then we'd want automatic marker making. And in fact, the customer would have to be willing to bear the price of that, because there would be an additional price, because individual garment marker making would be more costly than having manual intervention. Would be cheaper than having manual intervention. But the technology exists. We have single-ply cutters. We know that single-ply cutting is expensive. But the question is how expensive. And if you look at this, as we have done, then you find that if you manage a process, organise the production system so that you're adopting each of these for the purpose of customization, then it becomes acceptable. And of course, you're not going to go into this system without having made a commitment, and you're not going to do it for all your products. You're not going to offer a service like this for cheap products. It wouldn't be worthwhile. Okay, all of these companies and others offer perfectly adequate pattern systems, CAD/CAM systems, and we have surveyed what all of these will do, and you can in fact establish adequate pattern adaptation rules with all of these products. Okay, what are the real benefits for the industry? And when I say the industry, I'm talking about the whole industry, all of the supply chain too, including the retailer, ultimately. Okay, and what are the benefits to the consumer? We're looking for benefits for both, if it's worth doing. Okay, benefits for industry. If you're producing garments to individual requirements, then theoretically you'd be able to reduce your inventory costs. At the extreme, you could have a showroom for garments and no stock on the rails. So you could have Marks and Spencer's, Littlewoods, large companies like this, and you have them here too, I guess, large companies which have very large spaces, large areas of expensive space, stocking garments, stocking very much fewer garments, and perhaps providing a better service for the industry and the customers that it's serving. So lower inventory costs. If you have lower inventory costs, of course, and we find in Europe, in the UK particularly, I see, there are sales on all of the time. Surplus stock should be reduced. There would be less need to stock extreme sizes, because you can provide them, if you can provide them efficiently. Okay, so that should lead to lower retail overheads. We should have less work in progress at any one time, and we ought to develop improved customer satisfaction. Okay, there is also the distinct possibility of comparative shopping. If you have a situation at the moment where people walk past particular retail outlets because they know that the garments in there don't fit them, they might just go in knowing that they can buy a customised garment that they see and they like that will fit them. So the tendency to walk past retail outlets because of the fact that they don't provide you with what they want, because of fit or style to some extent, could be overcome. And it should lead to new market opportunities, and some of these I'll talk about in a moment. Okay, benefits to the consumer. Okay, the obvious one, better fitting garments. increased choice of design, style details, fabric, colour options, by having a wider range of retailers to which they can, call for to provide the garments. A level of exclusivity, but we're not providing exclusive garments, but certainly a level of exclusivity which they wouldn't otherwise be able to access. The driving force. Okay, question is there a demand for all this? That's obviously important. Okay, ready to wear only satisfies part of the population. And as I said at the beginning, that retailers try to offer for the target population that they're servicing an acceptably bad fit. Some of the population, I say, will be well fitted, but the general population, it's acceptable. Okay, and many of the population are not catered for within these general concepts. The petite, the tall, we have specialist outlets, of course, for these people, elderly and disabled. And in my initial work on this topic, I became involved because of elderly and disabled, because within Europe, there is the age of the population is extending all the time. And elderly are defined as people over 50, so that includes me. And it includes, in fact, a lot of my audience when I look around this room. We are considered to be elderly. Our body shapes change as we get older. Ladies' and men's body shapes change from what we all like to be as we were when we were 18, but we're not. We're no longer 18-year-olds. And our requirements are different. And that elderly population in Europe alone is thought to be about 100 million people. And we don't find very many outlets that target that particular group of the population. Okay, from the industrial point of view, the technology does exist. The development of technology which will support mass customization services, the critical one would argue, are the improvements of pattern adaptation and improvements, if you like, to some extent in the way scanners operate. But there are a couple of projects that I'm mentioning here, the e-Tailor project and the 3D Centre in the UK projects are looking at these sort of issues. So there is a significant amount of research going on in the UK, in Europe and in the States on making sure that the technology better matches the requirement of a mass customisation requirement. Okay. The driving force is in fact the consumer, and I'll come back to that at the very end. And the technology does exist. Okay, I'm going to have a look at immediate applications. Corporate wear, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. We have corporate wear, people with special needs, and what I'm calling niche markets. And I'm going to talk about these as case studies and come back to the general population later. Corporate wear suppliers, essentially people that supply products, for example, aircrew, airlines, uniforms, police, hotels, car hire companies. Most people, our hotel receptionists, they need quality products, but they're produced in large numbers. British Airways alone has 50,000 people in uniform. That's significant in the civil area of corporate clothing. We have, of course, military too, which is essentially corporate clothing. In this sort of circumstance, we have large numbers of standard sizes are manufactured, usually in low-cost manufacturing countries, with the special fit garments manufactured locally. So that's the sort of structure we have for most of these corporate wear suppliers. I'm going to give you a little example. We did a case study with a company called Hobson's & Sons as part of the 3D Centre project. Hobson's produced dress uniforms for the UK Ministry of Defence. They produce all of, if any of you have been to London and seen the changing of the guard, you've seen the Scots Guards on parade, on duty, every one of those uniforms has been manufactured by Hobson's & Sons. And they do this type of specialist uniform, specialist dress uniform, for many armed forces throughout the world, probably including the ones here in Cairo. Okay, they do made to measure. They have to look right. These guys have to look right. When they're on parade, they must be right. A Scots Guard, and I meant to bring you, had I had a little more time to prepare, I'll show you this as a picture. When a member of the Scots Guard is standing to attention outside Buckingham Palace, the bottom edge of his trousers must rest on the third buttonhole of his shoes. It's as precise as that. They are looking for exact fit, exact appearance. And they make all sorts of things. Okay, in this case, we have done a pilot scheme to look at this. We looked at trainees coming in this case, into the Navy. The scanning procedure was we put 16 people through a scanner in 40 minutes. We scanned men, but not women, mainly because with women there is a problem of defining the bust shape and bust volume. And there was a quick try-on from some standard garments to make sure that we were confirming that we'd got the right sort of results. What happened? Okay, the troops, of course, will stand in a standard position, so the scan was taken in a standard position, and then we found some difficulties. Immediately we came up with some problems with the way scanners performed. White underwear was a problem. Lycra seemed to cause problems with the image capture. These have now been overcome. But we took a target group of about 500 people. Okay, the old system of measurement extraction, we took 12 body measurements, were taken manually. This required 4 or 5 skilled operators, skilled tailors to take these measurements. It took about 6 minutes a person, and we had to manually record the information. Under the new system, we only extracted 10 measurements, and these were done totally automatically. Three key measurements were used to predict stock sizes. They make 72 stock sizes, far more than you actually produce in a retail situation, of course. And so we used 3 key measurements to see whether stock sizes could be issued. Okay, the time taken to scan is 1 minute, and we had to alternate the download, in this case we used Gerber software. Download time was nothing, of course, it was download this. So we have a situation here where we've got 2 quite different and comparable methods of looking at things. The old system, we had relatively few stock sizes. We had a lot of made-to-measure garments. We had manual sizing and cutting, which took between 2 and 2.5 hours. And we were able to produce 16 to 20 made-to-measure uniforms in about a week. And they're a small company in relative terms. In the new system, we had a very, very much higher increase in stock sizes, and of course stock sizes lead us to improved efficiency of production. We had a decrease in the number of made-to-measure garments. We were able to do the sizing and cutting using automated systems. We cut the time down from 2 and 2.5 hours to 35 minutes. And we were able to produce 12 to 15 made-to-measure garments in a day, whereas we're only producing 16 to 20 in a week before. So there are distinct improvements in efficiency, and this is a corporate clothing producer. I'm talking really about corporate clothing, of course, in this particular part. We also started looking at people with special needs, and a project which was known as the Dept project. This was to look at to see whether mass customization would work for elderly and disabled people. And the important thing here, by the way, is that if it works for elderly and disabled, or people whose body shapes are significantly different from the average population, then why shouldn't it work for people who are nearer average? That is the real issue. But in doing this, of course, what we were doing is taking a fairly extreme set of people to look at. And we wanted to see if we could do this with specialised garments, people, and at a price that would be close to the high street price for the same garment. Okay. We worked with Lectra Systems and produced what was a modification of their FitNet software, and we used this. We used garment patterns that were produced by a commercial company called Anders Westerlind, who are a Scandinavian company. They produce middle quality ladies' suits and tailored garments in general. But we did nothing more than that. We took their standard products and we adapted them automatically for a whole range of people with different functional needs. So that for a lady in a wheelchair, we're looking for automated adaptation from a set of body measurements that were taken from her, where we obviously require extra fabric in the back of trouser panels. You need a higher waist at the back. Interestingly enough, of course, most of the garments we actually wear were designed for people standing up. They weren't designed for people sitting down. And a very simple thing here, if each of you tries to put your hand in your trouser pocket, you tend to shift yourself to do this when you're sitting down. When you're in a wheelchair, you don't have that luxury. And just pushing a pocket from the side to the front can make an enormous difference in simple functionality. And it's dead easy to do if you know you're going to do it from the beginning. Okay, shorter jacket at the back. Our jackets are too long for most people sitting down. And the front trouser length needs to be longer. I'm getting near the end, unfortunately. Okay, I mentioned pocket positions. Just run through. Very short stature lady, disproportionate body shape, very short arms, wide lower body. This lady has scoliosis, a very large hump on her back. And we obviously have to take that into account. This old lady also has a very bad scoliosis. We couldn't mask this completely. But of course scoliosis gives you a twisted body shape too. And you notice that the hemlines are approximately horizontal, where her hips were at this sort of angle. So you've got hemline adjustment. Okay, we took extreme cases back in Leicester to check the thing again. We took two very short ladies and we totally automatically adapted patterns which were produced by from a range of garments produced by Richard Roberts. And these are the sort of results you get. Now this is with automated pattern adaptation. What's interesting is that the Savile Row tailors, James and James, are using this technology. Marks and Spencer's, on their website, when you look at what they are offering in pattern adaptation, are using a similar type of technology. And website interactions of these types, you've all seen. They're all offering levels of customization of existing garments. The question really is, do the consumers want it? And in a recent survey in the UK, and I mean recently, we only got this final data last week, we found that something like 66% of people in the elderly over 50 would love to see customization being offered. Okay, we're interested of course whether customers would be willing to wait for a garment to be produced, because it obviously wouldn't be instantaneous. And we can see that 50% of them would be willing to wait between 5 and 10 days, and others would wait for longer. The question is, can you do it in 5 and 10 days? And the answer is, if you use the technology appropriately, the answer is definitely yes. Okay, are they willing to pay a price premium? And okay, we have a range of indications here that they're willing to pay a price premium. It would seem that what we have, the technological issues are basically okay. We do have 3D scanner costs and limitations to take into account. We have still to sort out the pattern adaptation. We need a different approach to pattern adaptation to make that cheap and easy. And we want marker making efficiency a little better than it is at the moment. And of course there are the problem of single ply cutting costs. The high street demand for mass customization services is still not really established, at least not in the minds of the retailers. But there are niche markets, and there are certain advantages, certainly definite advantages for quality corporate clothing garment producers. And there are real opportunities for mail order companies to take up this technology. Okay. I'd just like to thank the DTI for their support in this project. Of course, for our industrial collaborators, and I'm only listing some of them here, colleagues at Montfort University. And of course, I welcome and thank the Textile Institute for their generous invitation to come and talk to you today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, well, I think we offer our thanks to Professor Harwood for an excellent and wide-ranging talk on mass customisation, and I hope that we will have time for some questions before the end of the session.